Nathan Hicken, and welcome to Tales from the Murder Museum. Deep in the wooden halls of the Murder Museum lies a slender staircase, tucked between a miniature library and an overflowing conservatory. If you follow the staircase down, eventually you'd hear a whirring sound. After a sharp turn, the stairs empty out into a cold room lined with fabric panels. Scattered across a variety of glass display cases are tape recorders, many still spinning away. In the corner lies one recorder simply labeled Port Erie 1974.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. The date is August 5th, 1974, 4:32 p.m. The temperature is...
What are you doing with grandfather's tape recorder? Does he know that you have it?
Emoline. Welcome to Notes from Port Erie. I'm your host...
Emoline.
Now I have to start over. Welcome to Notes from Port Erie, where we'll be taking a deep dive into the mysterious happenings of this little American town. Some of you who are listening
Who are you talking to?
The audience.
But who would be listening to you?
Some of you who are listening may not be familiar with the town of Port Erie, situated on the southeastern corner of Michigan's Mitt. With a population of just around 4,000, it's a tight-knit community containing 2 stoplights, 1 grocery store, 2 rival diners, and 4 separate cemeteries, because here, the dead outnumber the living. But Port Erie is more than just another town to fill up a spot on the map.
It's also the place where our parents chose to dump us with our grandparents every summer so they can have some alone time. I'm just saying it how it is.
Beyond all of that, Port Erie is home to some strange phenomena, most notably the Phantom of Shadow Eye Point. And this summer, we are going to crack the case. To set the scene, we'll need to inform you of the recent events surrounding Shadow Eye Point. And luckily for us, the local newspaper has been stunningly prolific on the incidents.
Honestly, it's like there's nothing else to report about here.
Regardless, for the past 7 days, locals have reported seeing strange lights and even stranger noises coming from Shadow Eye Point.
According to our grandmother, Shadow Eye Point is a popular location for sunset seekers, but more than one couple has been scared away from these hollow trees by the odd glowing.
While none of the reports have said anything about these lights having any sort of malicious purpose, people have been avoiding the area.
You say none of the reports, but what about Daphne?
All right, fine. One of the reports...
By Miss Daphne Lolo, the owner of the Double H Diner, insists that these lights were extraterrestrial. That's to say, alien. I'd ignore my skeptic of a sister for a moment.
I'm trying to do serious journalism here. This could help me get into uni.
Oh, come on. You're supposed to be unbiased. Miss Lolo's account reads as follows. I was on my evening jog along the coast Tuesday night when I stopped to take in the moon as it rose over the lake. I barely stopped for a breath when a red flaring light rose over the trees and a loud humming began to rattle the bushes. I know every type of plane that's ever graced God's good earth, and there's nothing like that made here. I know people may call me crazy, but I know what I saw. A verifiable UFO.
Verifiable as in it's still unidentified. But the majority of the accounts do not jump straight to aliens.
But this isn't the first time that these lights have ever been seen over Shadow Eye Point.
Unfortunately, she's right. But for that story, we'll have to take a trip to the Port Erie Library.
Okay, listen. My sister's still locking up her bike. I have to warn you before we go inside. The Port Erie Library is run by one of the most terrifying humans to ever walk this planet. Mrs. Welsh.
That's not fair.
Oh, hey, I didn't hear you.
I heard grandmother talking to one of the neighbours. She said that Mrs. Welsh's husband just died.
That doesn't explain why she was mean and nasty to us last summer.
Emoline, let's just get inside and don't start recording unless I say so. Okay, here we are at the back of the library where there's a small display on the town's history.
Loads of boring stuff and photos of people who don't know how to smile.
But amidst all this, a small newspaper clipping about the autumn of 1957.
This was back before people had television, so a lot of people tended to spend their time staring at the sky, and on the evening of October 5th, 1957, over 30 people reported seeing red lights dropping from the sky, and from the accounts, the police were able to pin the location down to Shadow Eye Point.
But when they arrived, there was nothing there.
So obviously, Port Erie has a history of alien encounters.
Not quite. You see, on that same night in 1957, there was a flight from Syracuse, New York, to Seattle.
So what?
So that flight path goes right over Port Erie, Michigan. Using maps and newspaper clippings from the library's archives, I was able to trace the flight path.
So a plane was responsible for the lights?
Not a plane, a person. Here. I found this newspaper from Syracuse 1957. Check out the headline.
Flight 712, emergency lands in Detroit.
Keep reading.
On the night of October 5th, 1957, Flight 712 out of Syracuse was forced to land in Detroit following a loss of cabin pressure when the emergency hatch on the onboard restroom was found open. While no one was injured in the landing, attendants discovered that one of the passengers was missing. Officials are working on tracking down the individual while the airline assures the public that they had done everything possible to ensure the safety of their aircraft.
And thus.
You think that the lights falling wasn't an alien, but a person who jumped from the plane?
Precisely.
How comparatively unexciting. Did they ever find the person?
I couldn't find any record of that, but I did track down the number for one of the police officers on the case.
And?
They said to call them back this evening.
Wait, someone's coming. Is it Miss Welsh? Are we allowed to record in the library?
It's Langford. Relax. Mr. Jared Langford works for the local newspaper. I reckon he would be a good person to interview. Emoline, put him down in our notes.
I'm not taking notes. I thought you were.
Welcome back to Notes from Port Erie. I'm currently sitting at the kitchen table about to call Detective Edgar Quill.
Yeah, sitting around while I'm drying all the dishes.
I did them last night. Now hush. I'm going to hold up the microphone to the receiver so they can hear what he says.
This is Detective Quill.
Hi, Detective. I'm calling from Port Erie. We spoke earlier.
Oh, yes, the girl who was curious about Flight 712. Well, that was a long time ago, but what do you want to know?
Perhaps you could start with the missing passenger, the one who jumped.
Ah, you've done your research. The passenger in question went missing somewhere between takeoff and the emergency landing, so we, as you did, rightly assumed that they must have jumped out of the plane when the emergency hatch opened. We tried our best to track the flight path and concluded they most likely landed in Lake Erie. But despite our search efforts, they were never found.
Do you have any idea why anyone would want to hurl themselves from an airplane in the first place?
My question exactly.
To answer that, I'll first have to explain a few things. The flight in question was a commercial flight to Seattle, but the majority of the cargo hold had been taken up by a wealthy heiress who was moving a large amount of her belongings from her winter home in Syracuse to her summer home in Washington. Amongst her things were several precious stones and items of jewelry of excessive worth. As the crew cataloged the cargo following the emergency landing, they found that nearly $150,000 worth of jewelry and gems were missing.
So you're suggesting that the jumper broke into the cargo hold to steal the jewels before making their escape by jumping?
Precisely.
But how did they get into the cargo hold in the first place?
Ah, that was a snag. You see, there was a couple of strange things about this case from the beginning. First of all, no one but the staff could access the cargo hold. And secondly, it's impossible to open the emergency hatch in the restroom by yourself. You need one person on the inside of the restroom and one person on the outside.
So there was an accomplice.
Well, we questioned other passengers and staff, but weren't ever able to pin anything down.
And the stolen jewels?
Well, we dredged the lakeshore for weeks following the jump, but never found anything. Seeing as the jewels didn't surface on the black market in the following year, we concluded they must have been lost to the bottom of the lake along with the jumper.
Is there anything else you can tell me about the jumper?
Well, all I've got is a name, Juniper Hahn.
Welcome back to Notes from Port Erie, where I am here to ask why my sister is dragging me out of bed on a Tuesday morning before I've had breakfast.
We're heading to the newspaper. You said you didn't want to be left out after the phone call last night, so it's your own fault.
I didn't realize detective work would involve skipping meals.
We'll stop by the diner afterwards, okay?
Why are we going here anyway?
I want to talk to Langford about his interviews, see if there's anything else he's learned about the sightings and how they could connect to the missing jumper.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't think that Juniper landed in a lake. Come on, here's the door.
Can I help you?
I was hoping to ask you a couple of questions.
I'm actually just getting ready to leave.
Got a big story?
Well, I'm covering Mr. Welsh's funeral this afternoon, and I'm going to interview the family right now, actually.
That's quite morbid. Is that what all the equipment's for?
Emoline?
Yes. Now, I'm sorry, I really have to go.
We're aspiring journalists. Don't you want to help the next generation succeed?
Look, if you're going to be at the funeral, then maybe we can catch up there, all right? Goodbye.
Well, that wasn't helpful.
So breakfast?
All right, we're at the Double H Diner.
Why are you recording now?
I thought it would be a good ambiance to discuss the case.
Well, I'm going to get some food. Miss Daphne just put out a fresh batch of scones.
So, let's review. 1957. Juniper Hahn boards flight 712. With the help of an unknown accomplice, she breaks into the cargo hold, steals some jewels, and then escapes via the emergency hatch. On that same night, lights are seen above Shadow Eye Point. Neither Juniper or the jewels were recovered. Now, nearly 20 years later, lights and sounds reappear at Shadow Eye Point.
Not just any lights and sounds. Aliens. I just chatted with Miss Daphne, and she's still convinced that what she saw and heard were aliens. They scared her bad enough that she doesn't even drive near the point anymore. In fact, hardly anyone does.
Fascinating.
And what does a missing jewel thief have to do with aliens?
I'm not sure. Yet. Would you pass me one of those scones?
I really hadn't planned on attending a funeral this afternoon.
If you'd rather stay home and read poetry, you're welcome to.
But do we have to wear grandmother's old clothes? They smell a bit zippy.
I don't know what that means. But yes, since neither of us brought black, you look great, Em. Besides, we're going there on business.
Fine. But if we're not going to be late, we have to leave. And of course it's raining. I hope the graveside eulogy isn't too long.
Hush! As soon as it's over, we'll find Langford. In the meantime, describe for the audience what's happening.
I'm rolling my eye as I take the tape recorder. Miss Welsh is standing at the edge of the grave. It looks as she's going to say something, or possibly cry. The casket is lying in the grave now, and it's covered in a flag. It's kind of shiny.
It's nylon.
I'd been married to Frank for over 53 years now, which at times felt too long, but now it feels too short. Many of you know Frank died from a heart attack. I guess in the end his heart was just too big. He loved this town right from the start. When we moved here nearly 20 years ago, Frank bought us a couple tracts of land along the coast and started a farm. I remember in those early days, Frank was always so nervous, always wandering the land for trespassers, carrying his prized shotgun, which has the honor of sharing his casket with him today.
This doesn't feel right for a funeral.
How many funerals have you been to?
Why, I remember one time he got so jumpy, he shot the neighbor's cow. They forgave him eventually. He was a simple man. He loved nothing more than a picnic amidst the hollow trees down by the point on an autumn afternoon. I'll miss him. He was a good soul. And beyond that, he was a good father. And so I'd like to give my daughter a chance to say a few words.
Daddy would be shaking his head if he saw us here crying today, so I'll keep this short. My daddy was incredible. He always took care of our little family. Even when times were hard, he'd find a way. I remember one year Christmas wasn't going to come as the crops had been bad. In fact, not a thing grew in our fields. Yet Daddy found a way for there to be a Christmas tree there that Christmas morning. Whenever the farm started to struggle, Daddy somehow kept us going. But it's the small moments I shared with him that will stick with me through the years. That flag that's draped across his casket today, something he and I made together some years ago out of material he'd found on our property. He spent many evenings sewing that together to hang up inside our barn. Now with the sale of the barn and the rest of the property, it felt fitting to bury him in it. I'll miss you, Daddy.
Now that we've witnessed that stirring eulogy, can we please find Langford and get out of here? Grandmother's dress is itchy.
I saw him earlier by the side of the grave. There he is. Come on. Langford?
Huh? Oh, it's you two.
Whoa, you don't look so good. You're kind of pale. Do you need to sit down?
No, I'm just a sympathetic crier.
Tough gig for someone in the journalism line.
Yes, well, I suppose. Yes, you wanted to know about my career, was that right?
Well, actually...
Yes, how long have you been with the newspaper?
Started there when I first moved here. I figured it was a good way to get to know the town people and the town itself. I was right. This will be my 17th year.
And were you always a journalist?
No, I held a couple of odd jobs here and there. Librarian, insurance agent, flight attendant, but journalism is what makes me happy.
Enough with the small talk. My real question is, how many times have aliens been spotted around town?
Well, Ms. Daphne seems convinced that those lights she saw were aliens, but other than that, well, there was one time, just before I got here, when an alien rumor spread around town, but nothing came of it, though.
Last question about this funeral. The daughter mentioned that the property would be sold. What all does that include?
Well, the land has actually already been sold to a development group. They're planning to build houses and such right up to the shore. Their property includes the surrounding fields and forests by the eastern shoreline, including Shadow Eye Point.
Emoline, would you hurry up?
I would if I knew what in the world we were doing sneaking out of our grandparents' house at 11 at night.
Would our investigation be complete if we didn't see the lights for ourselves? So heading to Shadow Eye Point.
I was afraid you would say that. At least put the recorder away until we get there. I'm going to trip over the cable.
Okay, we've made it to Shadow Eye Point.
With only a handful of bumps and bruises, remind me to stay home the next time you drag me out of the house at night.
Shadow Eye Point is a small landmass that juts out 300 or so feet into the lake. It's covered in trees that spill right up to the edge of the water.
Riveting stuff. Are we just going to stand here until...
Em, there's something moving in the trees. It's a red light.
Miss Lolo was right.
Come on, let's get closer.
Get closer? Are you insane? Wait, don't leave me here.
Hurry up, into the trees.
Ah, I nearly tripped over that.
We're nearly there.
Yes, and it's getting louder and brighter. I don't think that's a good sign.
We're not about to get abducted.
How do you know?
I have a feeling that the answer to this mystery is more terrestrial than extra. There! Someone moving through those trees ahead.
Oh, great. Let's move towards the person or thing that's creeping around in the woods at night.
They've stopped. Quick, duck behind this tree.
What was that in their hand?
I think it's a shovel.
They're digging holes in the middle of the night? What kind of alien does that?
Emoline, watch out! Shoot, they've seen us!
Oh, we are so dead.
Run!
This is not how I planned to spend our break.
Too late, they're gaining. Are you okay?
I'm fine. I just tripped over a root. Wait, this tree's hollow. Let's get inside. Turn on a flashlight. It's dark in here.
I'm trying.
Please tell me that's your hand.
I don't think we're the first ones to find this spot.
Oh my, that's a skeleton. It touched my hand. Oh, I'm gonna throw up.
There is a room. Check it out.
Don't get closer. We need to get the police.
Wait, the skeleton is wearing a backpack.
So what?
With strings coming out of the top. It was a parachute. And their clothes shot through.
Wait, there's something shiny in their pockets. Oh my.
They're wearing a necklace.
Oh, please don't touch it.
JL plus JH forever.
I'm out. Right now.
There you... Juniper.
Langford, you've got a lot of explaining to do.
Out of the way, please. It's her. 17 years later, and it's her.
Juniper Hahn, the thief, and your accomplice. You were the flight attendant on Flight 712.
Of course you were the one who let her into the cargo hold and helped pull the emergency hatch.
The landing was always Shadow Eye Point. Somewhat remote, secluded, but she disappeared. So I started working for the newspaper, nosed around, found out that people had seen the light from her parachute as she dropped, but no one had seen her. I soon discovered that a trigger-happy farmer owned this land, and I feared the worst, but without proof...
You've been using the lights and sounds to scare people away while you searched for her. And the jewels you stole.
Welsh had been using the jewels when times got tough. I was in no doubt about that. I figured he must have hid them somewhere on his property. But now that he was dead, that was scheduled to be sold.
So you started digging.
I thought I could find her before.
The flag on Mr. Welsh's casket. That was made out of Juniper's parachute, wasn't it?
I knew she was probably gone, but seeing that, I was in no doubt.
And the necklace, she wasn't just your accomplice.
She was my fiancée. Now I've found her. Thanks to you meddling sisters.
I think we'd better call Detective Quill. Today is Saturday, August 10th, 1974, and a lot has happened.
That's an understatement.
The police pulled Juniper's body from the hollow tree and concluded that she was indeed shot by a shotgun similar to the one buried with Mr. Welsh.
Oh, come on, it was the same. Mr. Welsh was spooked at the falling humanoid thing, shot at it and panicked. He hid the body and the jewels, but whenever his farm was hit hard, he'd dip into the jewels.
The police aren't really sure if there's anything they can do now that Mr. Welsh is dead.
Langford, on the other hand, is facing some vandalism charges, but the family of the heiress isn't going to press any accessory to theft charges.
Seeing as the majority of the jewels were recovered from Juniper's backpack.
You're ignoring the best part. As a thank you, the family let us keep one of the pieces. We each received an obsidian necklace with half of a heart, so they fit together.
Yes, it's adorable.
Oh, come on, you'd love it.
They are quite flattering. But I think that brings us to the end of Notes from Port Erie.
This has been Emoline.
And this has been Genevieve, signing off.
On the other side of the recording room lies a still spinning tape. With a teal eye painted across the top, it's labeled Moonshine, Oregon, 1989.